Hey there, and welcome to the Confident Woman Podcast. I'm your host, Rachel Brooks. Join me as I sit down and chat with co-hosts, friends, and carefully curated guests and talk about all the things that empower you to become your best and most confident self. So, let's get started. Hey, so I've been sitting with this for a while now, and honestly, it's been one of those things that I felt in my entire body and in my spirit for so long. But I just couldn't fully put it into language until recently when I just had this time to really sit with things and reflect. And, so much of life had been happening and I just really hadn't had time to really just be. And so maybe this is why I want to talk about it today, because I'm starting to finally feel like there's words for what is being felt and the underneath and the tension of, again, your body and your spirit. And I know that I'm not the only woman who has looked at her life and thought, on paper, all of this still exists. This is still my life. These are still my responsibilities. These are still the things and the people and the roles and the expectations that have made up my days. And yet something in me knows I just can't keep living like this. I can't keep moving. I can't keep thinking. I can't keep leading. And I can't certainly keep carrying it all the same way that I used to. And this was the heaviness, the load that I was just left with to really think about and reflect, because I think when things get so heavy, eventually we just have to set this thing down or set it aside. And before we can muster up the strength to continue to pick it up and carry it forward again, this is where we have this intentional pause. And I think that for me, there have been so many moments over these last several months where I have found myself just sitting in my car after leaving the hospital, or coming home and just dropping my keys on the counter and just standing there and just staring into this open space. Sometimes for me, my little escape is that I'll just stare at the wall until everything just gets small and quiet and I can reflect internally. But it was this place of where I just was so exhausted in a way that no amount of sleep or no amount of caffeine can even fix it. And I was just trying to gather myself enough to move into that next thing that needed me. And what kept rising to the surface was not just the simple fact that I was tired, though I was. And when I looked at everything, I just realized like this had been the pattern. It's just one thing to the next. I could feel my entire life just pressing against me in different ways, like that pressure, this internal pressure, right? Sometimes we feel this external, sometimes we feel this internal, and sometimes we feel them both at the same time. Me, who had spent so much for life being strong, being capable, being the one who handles it, being the one who pushes through everything and figures it out and just keeps moving forward. You get knocked down, you get back up. And here she was, just no longer fitting inside the same life the same way. And I think that realization, it was so sobering, because there was no neat explanation for it, and there was no easy solution for it either. And there was no easy button that I could just push and all of a sudden things would just fall in place and I could just move on with my life and have a beautiful 8+ hours sleep and no pressure, no stress, no nothing, right? That's the fantasy. That's the escape. But that's not our reality. And I think that this is what can feel so disorienting in these seasons like this, is it's not always just that one thing. It's something that we have been so ingrained and so conditioned to be doing, but at a pace that we can no longer carry, that we can no longer support. That somehow, some way, as high performers, ambitious go-getters, as high achievers, as driven women, whatever verbiage and adjectives we want to attach to our identity, it plays this huge role in how we show up. And so I knew that pace was not sustainable. And it's this pressure that you have to feel like it's normalized, because without these roles or without these identities that you've taken on, it just feels natural. And so we justify. And then we ask, is it grief? This responsibilities? The expectations, the work, the relationships, the dreams that you've carried, the version of success you once reached for, all of it meeting the woman, you, me, here, now, and forcing us to ask whether or not this life that we built even still reflects who we are, let alone the woman we're becoming. When we're being pulled into a whole different direction and we feel this inner tension, so much of us wants to hold on to what was because it worked. It was comforting. It was sustainable. It was predictable. It was certainty. But this tug of war, this inner tension that we feel is our sign that we have to let go. We can't become if we're still holding on. We can't become if we're tethered to a past version. And so that question, it can almost feel offensive at first, especially if you are somebody like me who has worked so hard for what you have and you prayed for what you have, you built what you have, you fought through everything, even enough to just be standing where you're at. Because when you start feeling guilty, you start having some shame, and that shame attacks your identity as well. And so when you have this guilt and the shame, you start wondering whether or not you're even grateful. And so now this feeling of being ungrateful starts attacking you, right? Maybe you just need more rest. Maybe you need more discipline. Maybe you need more focus, more faith, more structure, more patience, more perspective. And maybe you just shouldn't be feeling so dang down, right? Because we can look at it and say, this is the life that other people have prayed for, so there's no reason why you shouldn't be grateful. Hey, listen, I've been there. We could still feel ungrateful and grateful at the same time. We could still feel the blessings and the pressure at the same time. Two truths can coexist. And so when I'm finding myself in this place, I didn't want to feel more shame, like just knocked to the ground. And so when you start trying to adjust yourself before you ever stop to even consider that maybe, just maybe, the issue is not simply you, but maybe the issue is that your life, your patterns, your pace, your definitions, and your way of carrying things have not caught up to the woman you are now. So like I said, life will continue driving you in that direction. But if you're tethered to these past versions, these past habits, beliefs, identities, patterns, whatever that is, we can't continue to be tethered to two versions, two lives. And so that has been one of the hardest truths for me to face. I have had to look at all parts of my life and ask whether I was still living from alignment or simply from habit. Whether I was still saying yes because it was right, or because I had trained myself to be the woman who can hold more than she should. And that was something I wore proudly, but not so happily. Sometimes that's just what we do. We can do it all. We wear this badge of pride and honor that we are superwomen because that's our culture that tells us that we can't show any fracture or breaking point because then we're weak and we got to be strong and we got to be, I get it. But there's a season, and I found myself really from a place of survival because I think that scarcity is what tethered me to hold on so tightly to these past versions of me. That this current that was pulling me into this becoming this woman I am today felt very forced. And I think that I just wasn't in a place where I could be pulled so quickly and so abruptly when everything just felt so disoriented and heavy. Because I think the longer we sit and ask ourselves these questions, the deeper we go, the deeper we have an understanding and a level of awareness that we can answer truthfully and have honest convictions about where we are in these seasons. Because again, when we have this tension, we have to get to the root of it and ask ourselves, why? So now you are talking about your identity. And that is very scary. That's the root. That's the honesty. That's the thing that has this microscope and this magnifier on it. Because when we start looking at our identity, we're forced to face some hard truths. We're forced to let go of some things that were really near and dear and meaningful to ourselves. We're forced to face some fears, some challenges, some darkness, some past things. So when we talk about our identity, that's where everything breeds from. That's the core of who you are. And it's the core of who you are now and what matters to you now and what you are willing to keep carrying forward, what you are no longer willing to call normal. And so, what does stewardship look like in this season? What does faithfulness look like now? What does success mean now? What does freedom mean now? What does it mean to live in a way that actually supports the woman God is shaping you into instead of you keeping yourself stuck in the cycle of overextension and performance? And I think a lot of women are asking these questions right now. And these are the conversations that we're having inside our community. And it's interesting that sometimes it just takes you sharing and showing up and just being honest about it. And it opens the door for conversation. And it also gives others permission to do the same. And when we ask these questions, whether we realize it or not, something that just was once meaningful now feels insignificant. It feels heavy in a way that has less to do with the effort and more to do with this misalignment. They can feel it when they can sense that the old version of themselves is no longer enough to carry the life they are living. And the new version has not even fully found her footing yet because we're still in this transition. We're still in this messy middle. And that is the in-between space that's just so hard because you're standing in the middle of life that still looks familiar. Internally, everything is shifting. But behind closed doors, in private, when it's just you and God and your own honest thoughts, something is changing. You've seen something you can't unsee. And certain things do not sit with you the same anymore. And certain patterns are costing you too much. The certain roles, these expectations, the ways of moving through the world that no longer feel sustainable. And that level of awareness, it changes everything. And I remember having one of these moments where I was just thinking through all the moving parts of my life, my responsibilities, my grief, my business, my health, my relationships, my future, all of it. And for a second, I could feel myself slipping into that old mindset of, okay, so how do I just manage this better? How do I organize it better? How do I hold it together better? And the more that I kept asking about making things better, there was just something in me that had to just stop. The question is not how do I keep maintaining a life, but what is this season trying to show me? And what would it look like to stop forcing myself to live from that old version of strength? When I was asking these questions, the truth really hit me hard because so much of what we all call strength is just often endurance without examination. Because now you're not only carrying your life, but you're also carrying an outdated identity inside of it. And so I don't say this lightly because I think so many of us have built entire lives around identities that once protected us. Again, the strong one, the capable one, the independent one, the reliable one. She's the one who keeps everyone else okay, keeps carrying the family, the work, the pressure, the emotional labor, the mental bandwidth, the goals, the vision, the weight. Those identities can look so admirable from the outside. And in some seasons, they may even be what helped us survive. But there comes a point where survival is no longer the assignment. There comes a point when God starts calling you into wholeness, into honesty, into a way of living that is more aligned, more surrendered, more supported, and more sustainable. And that shift can show up anywhere. It can show up in your work when you realize that being good at something doesn't automatically mean it's the best use of your life or time or energy. It could show up in your business when you realize that the model or the system or the infrastructure you've been trying to force no longer supports the actual life you want to live. It can show up in your relationships when you start seeing how often you have bent yourself backwards and trying to conform and contort to the comfort of others while you're slowly losing touch with your own needs and convictions. And it can show up in your spiritual life when God starts pressing on the very places you would much rather avoid because He loves you too much to let you keep calling something aligned when it is pulling you away from your peace, His peace. And I think this is why the conversation matters so much. Because when the life you built no longer fits the woman you are becoming, the answer is not always to make a fast move or stop abruptly, but it is to tell the truth and stop trying to talk yourself out of your own discernment. It is about stopping and assuming that you have to keep carrying something you should. It's about looking honestly at your life and ask whether the current rhythms, your relationships, commitments, your expectations, your goals, and your definitions still reflect the values you hold now. And for me, this season has stripped away a lot. It stripped away my ability to fake being fine. It stripped away my tolerance for things that just are no longer in alignment with me. And it stripped away this illusion that I could just keep overextending and calling that purpose or calling it loyalty and nobility. It's forced me to see where I was still trying to prove, still trying to preserve, and still trying to maintain something that I was just trying to squeeze myself back into because it was comfortable. But the truth is, it no longer fit. You have to stop and you have to listen and be willing to admit that this is no longer working. And from there, you can begin to rebuild from truth instead of pressure. And confidence isn't just being bold or polished, but confidence, it's honesty, it's self-trust. It's paying attention when something in your life keeps pressing on the same place and refusing to go numb to it. Confidence is allowing yourself to admit the old version of your life or of yourself may no longer be the right fit. And confidence is being willing to have the harder conversation with yourself before you rush into finding answers. A lot of becoming happens while you are just standing in the middle of the life with a new awareness and very few clear next steps. And that can feel unsettling. But I do not think that means nothing is happening. I think some of the most important shifts in our life begin when we finally stop trying to force certainty and instead become honest enough to say, this no longer fits me the way it used to, and I need to do something about that. So if you're in the season where your life still looks one way from the outside, but inside you know something's off, I want you to sit with that instead of brushing past it. And I want you to ask yourself where you're still trying to force a fit because it is familiar. Where does God keep bringing you back to? Where is your attention going? Is it to the same places that you've tried to overlook? Or are we focusing on what He's already got planned for us? Keeping our eyes on God and not our problems, not what was, what still has to be done, but where is God leading you? And trust me, you don't need to have this all figured out your whole life by the end of this week. This is literally a life's work journey. And you never truly arrive, but you do need to move. And you do need enough courage to stop arguing with what you already know and admit that maybe, just maybe, this life was built right for this one season, and maybe this season is asking something else of you right now. And so I want to leave you with this. Wherever you are in your life, whether you're trying to build something or let something go, or trying to make sense of it all, what are you carrying simply because you have carried it for so long that it started to feel like part of who you are? And what might change if you stopped asking how to keep managing your old life better and started asking what the woman you are becoming actually and truly needs now. And so take that to God. Sit with it. Journal through it. Just let yourself be honest enough to hear what has been getting buried under this pressure, these habits, and these expectations. Because sometimes that first step isn't the big major decision, but it's the simple step of telling the truth. And if this episode met you right where you are and you want a simple place to begin, start with my I Am Enough Reset Guide. You can find the link in the show notes below. So until next time, take care and God bless.
Hey there. Thank you so much for joining me on today's episode of the Confident Woman Podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode as much as I did, please be sure to like, subscribe, and leave us a review. Thanks again for listening.